In the early months of 2001, a group of engineers stood around a prototype console and realised they were about to fail. They had promised a world that was physically impossible to build. To save the future of a multi-billion-dollar tech giant, they had to lie to the hardware. They had to create an island that existed in two places at once, governed by a logic the machine wasn't even built to understand. This wasn't just a level, it was a mathematical hallucination that should have crashed the system the moment it started. That hallucination is the Silent Cartographer. To the average player, it's the definitive Halo experience: a sun-drenched beach, a warthog, and a lot of blue water. But behind the scenes, it is an over-engineered masterpiece of smoke and mirrors. Today, we're stripping away the textures to show you how Bungie solved the impossible problem of open-world design on a machine with less memory than a modern toaster. You're going to see why this single level is the reason first-person shooters actually work on consoles, and why its design is so intricate it makes modern AAA titles look lazy.
Hi, so my name's Alex Seropian. I'm a founder of Bungie.
Hi, I'm Hamilton Chu. I'm producer on Halo.
This is Halo. We've been working on this game for, a little over 3 years now.
To understand the genius of the cartographer, we have to look at the wreckage of 2001. At this time, first-person shooters were basically just a series of hallways. You had Doom, you had Quake, and you had a lot of grey walls. When Microsoft bought Bungie to launch the Xbox, they didn't just want another shooter, they wanted a killer app. The problem? Bungie's original vision for Halo was a massive open-world strategy game. They had these giant sweeping vistas designed for a bird's-eye view, and now they had to make them work from the perspective of a soldier on the ground. The Xbox was a powerful machine for its time, but it had a massive Achilles heel: 64 megabytes of RAM. In the world of game development, that's like trying to paint a mural on the postage stamp. The team wanted a level that felt like a seamless world: no loading screens, no invisible walls, and an AI that could hunt you across an entire island. On paper, this was a disaster waiting to happen. The engine was straining, the hardware was smoking, and the team was running out of time. They needed one level to prove it could be done. This was the E3 demo level. If the frame rate dropped, or if the AI glitched out during the live presentation, the Xbox brand might have died before it even reached the shelves. The industry was watching, and the skeptics were loud. They said a controller could never match a mouse and keyboard, and they said open environments were a recipe for a boring, directionless mess. Bungie's sandbox philosophy was the ultimate gamble. They wanted the player to feel like they were in a living, breathing ecosystem. But here's the thing about sandboxes: they are incredibly difficult to engineer. If you give the player a vehicle that goes 60 miles an hour on a circular island, they are going to find every seam in your code. They are going to drive over things they shouldn't, they are going to skip triggers, and they are going to break the narrative flow. The team realised that to make the level feel free, they actually had to engineer it more strictly than any hallway shooter ever made. They had to build a playground where every single rock was a calculated decision, and every enemy was a line of code fighting for its life. But as they started building, they realised the island they had created was literally too big for the game to remember. The first over-engineered secret is the island's shape. It's not just a circle, it's a series of interlocking combat bowls. If you look at the map from above, you'll see that the terrain is actually a sequence of dips and ridges. This wasn't just for cover, this was a technical necessity. By keeping the player in a bowl, the game only had to render what was inside that specific dip. The moment you drive your warthog over a ridge, the game is frantically deleting the section you just left and loading the one you're entering. It's a seamless transition that feels like freedom, but it's actually a high-speed shell game. However, this created a new problem. If the player drove too fast, the loading couldn't keep up. They had to engineer speed bumps into the terrain, clumps of trees and rocky outcrops that looked natural but were actually there to slow you down just enough for the hardware to breathe. Then there was the AI. In 2001, most enemies followed a patrol path. In the Silent Cartographer, the Covenant were given behavior trees. This meant the elites weren't just reacting to you, they were reacting to the environment and each other. If an elite saw you get into a warthog, he wouldn't just stand there shooting, he would actively look for a piece of geometry to hide behind that specifically blocked vehicle fire.
It's really nice not to be showing you a movie today, and although it makes me very nervous to actually play this for you, I am going to be playing Halo in the flesh on the Xbox. On behalf of the whole Halo team, thanks a lot for coming, and welcome to Halo on the Xbox.
But then came the final complication. After all this engineering, the level felt empty. It was a beautiful technical demo, but it wasn't a game yet. It lacked a heart. And that's when everything changed. The team realized they were actually building two different missions. One was the beach assault, and the other was a dark interior mission called The Shaft. Neither one was quite long enough to be a standalone level. In a moment of sheer desperation, and a bit of "why didn't we think of this sooner?" they decided to merge them. They literally cut a hole in the middle of their beautiful island and dropped the interior mission inside it. This created the Fold. By making the player go down into the facility, reach a dead end, and then fight their way back up to the beach, they essentially doubled the gameplay time without adding any new assets. But it did something even more important. It reframed the entire level. It wasn't just a beach anymore. It was a lid on top of a subterranean secret. This accidental merger is what gave the level its legendary pacing, turning a technical showcase into a narrative journey. It's the ability to perfectly balance three separate disciplines, architecture, psychology, and engineering, that made this level a masterpiece. The golden triangle of Halo, guns, grenades, and melee, found its perfect home here. The designers realized that if they gave the player a sandbox, the fun wouldn't come from the script, it would come from the physics. When you see a warthog tumble down a hill after a grenade blast, that isn't a canned animation. That is the result of thousands of lines of code calculating the weight, velocity, and friction of that specific vehicle on that specific slope. It was over-engineered because Bungie didn't just want it to look good, they wanted it to feel consistent. They built a world governed by rules, not by scripts. When you finally reach the cartographer map at the bottom of the facility and see the holographic ring for the first time, it's a moment of pure payoff. You've conquered the island, decoded the technology, and mastered the sandbox. It was the moment the combat evolved promise was finally kept. The impact of this level cannot be overstated. It became the blueprint for the modern shooter. Every time you play an open-world game that uses terrain to guide your eye, or an AI that knows how to flank you, you are seeing the DNA of the Silent Cartographer. It proved that you could have narrative momentum in an open space. It showed the industry that players were hungry for engagement, not just cutscenes. The level remains a masterclass in invisible design. Most players will never know about the occlusion culling, the behavior trees, or the folded level design. They just know that it feels right. That is the ultimate mark of a masterpiece, when the work is so complex that the result feels effortless. That being said, any developer will tell you, when you spend all your time perfecting one thing, something else usually falls apart. While the island was a dream of sunshine and strategy, the team was about to pivot into a nightmare of repetition and dark corridors. The very next phase of the game would feature a level so controversial it still divides the fanbase to this day. But to understand why the library happened, we have to look at the darker side of Bungie's development. If you want to see how the masters of the sandbox ended up building a literal maze of madness, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to be here for the descent. Thanks for watching.